Welcome to Take Command, a Dale Carnegie podcast, the show where we seek to uncover what leadership means in today's world. I'm Joe Hart, CEO of Dale Carnegie, and we will be talking to diverse leaders with stories to tell across various industries to help unlock your potential for success. We will be sharing real-life insights into leadership, which in turn can help spark the next level of your growth as a leader. Today's guest is an entrepreneur, influencer, and best-selling author with a deep love for real estate. He has successfully brokered some of the largest and most luxurious real estate deals on the planet, collaborating with well-known celebrities and influencers to craft the perfect blend of luxury and lifestyle. Recently, he earned the prestigious title of Best Healthy Lifestyle Influencer of the Year, recognized by Influencers Insider. Beyond his business endeavors, he is an avid skydiver, helicopter pilot, ultra-endurance athlete, mountain climber, and sought-after conference speaker. Please welcome the CEO and founder of Super Luxury Group, Alvaro Nunez. Alvaro, welcome to the Dale Carnegie Take Command podcast.
Thank you so much, Joe. Super excited to be here today.
Well, it's great to have you with me. You are such a fascinating person, not just because of the incredible work that you've done in starting a business, really in a very difficult industry and distinguishing yourself, jumping out of airplanes, flying helicopters, writing a book, speaking, running ultra marathons and Ironman competitions. I mean, just really looking forward to hearing about some of your experiences. You came to the US, as I understand, really to focus on being a tennis player. You were an outstanding tennis player and you were here on scholarship, but that changed. Tell us a little bit about, what happened there.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for the kind introduction. Very humbled about it. And everything starts with a dream, right? So as a kid, I always wanted to pursue my career of becoming a tennis professional. And in this case, those dreams got a little bit derailed, but there's always something that you can do when you get derailed, which is to still use that as leverage. Everything that you have invested on throughout your career, you can use it as leverage for your next chapter. So as I decided to not continue with that path of becoming a professional tennis player after I graduated from high school, I decided to use tennis as leverage to get myself to the US so that I could get a scholarship, get a good education, and still play at a high level, which will open other doors. And once I was in the US, it was all about the American dream.
You stopped playing tennis, and then what did you do after that?
So I graduated as a valedictorian, got to enjoy the whole mindset of capitalism, entrepreneurship that the US got to offer, really a different way on how things were done back home in Madrid, Spain. And that kind of inspired me to want to start my own business, to really get more involved in the communities and to expand myself. The whole concept of self-development became a new thing for me. And that was something that I started to apply more and more. And that passion that I had for tennis was used for leverage to build my professional career in marketing. And marketing eventually led to other opportunities.
And when you say it was used for leverage, what do you mean it was used for leverage?
Well, I think that everybody has something within ourselves that we're skillful about, whether it's we're good at singing, we're good in sports, we're good in education, something that you're good at. You just need to realize what that is. And sometimes practice leads to that, right? You don't just get born and you're really good at something. Sometimes you have to develop those skills through effort and time and consistency. So it's not that I was a natural and born amazing tennis player, but I developed a high quality level through all the hours that I put as a kid. So what I mean by leverage is that, okay, if I know that going in the direction of trying to become a professional tennis player during a huge financial crisis that we are facing globally, but especially at home where we were losing everything, the idea of just not continuing with my education and just try to become a professional tennis player and traveling around the world, investing financially and time-wise on something that you don't know that is going to be guaranteed, then it's not something that I would like to continue with, rather than saying, hey, tennis has gotten me this far. What can I do now that I can use tennis to launchpad myself to the next level, that next chapter? And the US seemed like a great opportunity with the American dream.
Sometimes we will have a dream for ourselves, or we'll work really, really hard to get to a certain point. And certainly you had done that very successfully with tennis. And then you get to a point where, we come to a crossroads. And sometimes that decision to go in a different direction, that's a really tough decision. How did you make that? Was that a difficult decision for you to move on? Or was it just for you saying, hey, this is a natural progression. I've got the mindset where I'm looking for my next opportunity?
I think life begins on the other side of fear. So every time that you are encountering that barrier, that resistance, that feeling of, that is something that you should do, but you're afraid of doing, then that's when you need to move forward. And yes, you're not always 100% sure about something. Sometimes you face a barrier where you cannot walk through that alone. And having a support system that allows you to overcome those difficulties, it's very important. As a 17-year-old, you might not have the strength to take on this new challenge or this road by yourself. So having your mother in this case, that was very important for me to say, hey, I think this is a great opportunity. Let's go for it. And she was a huge support for me. Thanks to that, I moved forward, where you will also have people that will say, no, you're crazy. It's not a good idea. You shouldn't do it. And actually, you're going to face more of those at the beginning when you're trying to initiate anything. So I think that once you are able to cross that barrier, you start building momentum and you start getting those little wins, which builds confidence, because confidence is what's going to allow you to continue moving on into the next chapters of your life. And tennis just became something that I took with me, not just for getting myself a nice scholarship in the US, but later on to build amazing relationships and opportunities.
It's great to be able to leverage something like that as you did. The point about confidence is really true, right? I mean, confidence can be a superpower for us, so to speak. If we can look back at the things that we've done successfully and remind ourselves of the good that is there, it can give us the confidence to move forward. Now, in your particular case, you went into something that sounds like it was completely foreign to you, right? I mean, you went into the luxury real estate market, highly competitive market. You're in the Miami area at the time, and you decided ultimately to start this business. That would seem like a big, hairy, audacious goal. How did you do that? And how did you give yourself the confidence in that particular situation to move forward?
Well, you have to put in this, I guess, mixer, all the different things that you believe you're passionate about, that you can turn something unique and successful. I personally had a regular job, 9 to 5, well, actually 7 to 8 p.m. because I ended up overstretching myself, like it happens often as we become workaholics at something. And once you lose that job, or once something happens, because again, not everything is forever, then all of a sudden you get those wake-up calls. And my wake-up call was that I was investing a lot of time and energy into something that was not fulfilling me as a whole. I was doing great in my career, financially as well. As a 23-year-old, I was living the American dream when it comes to what everybody was expecting from me. But really deep down, I was not fulfilled. And then you start looking at life through the wheel of life, all the different areas. So you start seeing that your career and your financials are just two of the areas. But what about your spirituality? What about your relationships? What about your health? What about your intellectual? What about your experiences? And you start looking at all these different areas. And I was just not putting enough time and effort on those. So I said, okay, what is my dream lifestyle? And I started to, first of all, visualize what was my dream lifestyle. And that dream lifestyle comes when you combine the different passions from the different areas. And sometimes, hey, you might not have it all figured out, but at least start with something. And then you can start becoming more curious over time to start developing those passions. And when you develop those passions, then you're going to start unlocking something that is very powerful and that is going to take you to places that you will never even imagine. So I always thought about, okay, I have my dream lifestyle. What is the vehicle that is going to allow me to live that dream lifestyle? And that vehicle became that business. And it was about building something that fuels my passion. So if I love to travel, if I loved luxury real estate, if I loved to interact with incredible individuals, and I loved all the concept of marketing, what can I put together that is going to be unique? And sometimes you have to bet on something. you have to look into what is something that is unique, that is not been developed yet, and bet on it. And when you combine your passions, you're just going to thrive, because if you're going to go down, at least you're going to go down doing something that you love. So that was kind of like the mindset on how to establish the foundation. And we will go more in depth about what Super Luxury Group is about and how it got started, because the story behind it is very remarkable. And sometimes you have to acknowledge that to yourself, because that's again what we talked about. It gives you the confidence to know that, wow, despite all the odds of not making it in such a saturated market with so many sharks in it, I was able to find a specific niche that allowed me not only to do something that I was passionate about, but also to thrive. And that was, at the end of the day, the core on how my whole story as an entrepreneur started.
Well, it must have been daunting, I mean, to look at that market. Many times people look at a market and they say, where's the blue ocean, so to speak, versus the red ocean? Where is that place that I can go? But the market that you picked is certainly a tough one. So what is the story of Super Luxury Group?
So it all started actually in the Dominican Republic. I was unfortunately let out from a company I was working for during my last year of visa as a student. And I was able to operate at a really large scale. I was 23 years old, running a team of over 100 people. I was doing pretty well, and they tried to sponsor me to get the visa, the work visa. And the process for that visa to go through, it's very tedious, because there's so many applicants that you need to pass a lottery. And I didn't pass the lottery. So my application was not even reviewed. So all of a sudden, from having what it is, quote unquote, the American dream and everything figured out, you can no longer be in the country because you're supposed to be there taking care of the business. And now you have to leave the country. That's the moment that we talked about, right? And that's when you start building something different. You have two choices. You can go back to comfort zone, or you can start looking for something that is going to allow you to grow. It's an opportunity. And when you decide, okay, I'm not going back to Spain, where I have all the comfort and all the things that I know I have regardless, let me seek for a different opportunity that combines all these different passions. And that led me to Dominican Republic, which is where my mother and my father actually moved a couple of years ago, just because they found their opportunity to reset their life after the financial crisis. My mother was at that time starting to do real estate, and a person that bought a property from her said that, hey, I'm no longer going to be coming to this island for more than once or twice a year. Would you mind to rent it short term? And again, that was something that was not happening in the Dominican Republic. It was barely starting here in the US with Airbnb and so on. But over there, it was not a thing. Everybody that was flying to the Dominican Republic was, for the most part, to stay at an all-inclusive hotel. So we found an opportunity there. And once I flew into the DR and started to look into all the oceanfront properties, there was a commonality in there. All those properties were, for the most part, empty. All the owners were somewhere else, and they were not being rented. So I started door knocking and started to talk to the housekeepers or any person that was at the property to speak to the owners and present them an opportunity on how we could put those properties under our portfolio to rent it short term and to really create some ROI for them while keeping it in shape. So they liked the idea. We started to develop that business model. We started to identify who are the type of clientele that travels to this type of properties. And we saw that there were already some companies that have established themselves as the hub for the high net worth individuals that travel to these jet set locations. However, these companies, they did not have a destination in the DR. They did not have those villas in there. So approaching those companies was the key element on how to establish partnerships that will help us build the business. So for myself, I said, okay, who does Tom Cruise, Will Smith, all these celebrities hire when they need to go into one of these fantastic villas in those jet set locations? And once we identified those businesses and once we started establishing those relationships, we started to operate as the local provider, as the local partner. So When they had a big client that wanted to go to the DR, to one of the villas that we had under our portfolio, we started working with them. So that was an eye-opener on what it was to work with such individuals. The only thing is that once we were done, these people were going to a different destination, but with the big company, not with us. So that was the leap of faith of saying, look, I want to be this big company. I'm going to go overseas and I'm going to start traveling for 4 months, just connecting with all these local partners that I want to establish that do the same thing that we do in the DR, but in other jet set locations. Started to go that route, established a really huge network. Then later on, decided to not only become the bigger company, but also to start doing something that nobody else was doing, which was approaching the people that will create the bridge between their properties and our ultimate clientele, because we were no longer working with these big companies. So how do we get access directly to these celebrities? We started to look into their social media and see who they were following. Most of these people don't follow many people, so you could see directly who are they. And we started to invite these people, which nowadays we call them influencers. So we started to invite influencers to our properties, as we were telling the owners or our local partners that that was a great opportunity to bring exposure, because those properties were not rented 100% of the time. So on the downtime, we will invite these people to come, create content, because we needed to create content anyways, and promote it. And it became a very successful hit. Not only we were able to bring massive exposure, but also reach our ultimate clientele of celebrities. And then we started to connect with luxury brands, media, and so on. So the business exploded. It started to go very well. And that's when, during COVID, when all the travelings were canceled, I actually said, I'm going back to the States. I'm going to get myself the investor visa, establish myself in the States, because everybody that wants to work at an international level, they want to work with a company that has a quote unquote more credible location or headquarter, and not so much in the Dominican Republic. So I ended up coming back to the US with an investor visa, established the business in Miami, started to shift the business model, not so much for the rentals, but for the sales. And that's when the business shift, because we started to see huge growth in real estate. People were looking to sell and to buy like crazy. And we were the ones providing the same business model that we were applying for those rentals, but for the properties that were trying to be sold. And we started to go with that niche, and has been going well since.
There's so many interesting dimensions to what you just described. I mean, the fact that you had this kind of influencer concept years ago, before it became as prominent as it is today. So there was a creative approach. There was also a little bit of a fearlessness in terms of approaching these people, which must have been a little bit unnerving. You also took a leap of faith in kind of going in this direction. You built it, you expanded it. What are some of the traits, if you look back on yourself, because I think about the people who are listening to this podcast, what are some of the qualities that you demonstrated for yourself that you think really were critical in building this business? Courage, would you say courage?
I will say courage. And again, this all comes down to something very powerful that you're talking about, which is identifying who you are, what are your values, and to live by those values. The DNA is what's going to identify your success or your failures. So you have to develop that through time. And in this case, when I look back into my values, it was all about resiliency. It was about relentless. It's about empowerment. It was about humbleness. And it was about getting with what you said, that courage. And I think that if I look back as a 24, 25-year-old, I think that you have to take the chances. You don't have to have it all figured out, but definitely you want to move forward with something that you get that gut feeling inside. And it's easier to move forward when you put everything on the table, when you don't look back as a comfort zone that you can fall back. You can only fall forward. So my whole idea was, okay, if I fall, it's going to be forward. Whatever is it that I'm doing is something that I'm clear that is the direction on where I want my life to be going. And you learn through the mistakes, but you also get excited through the rewards.
You're talking about mindset, and this is a hard thing for all of us at times, and certainly it's for a lot of people, is we have this fear. We can fear, what if I try this and it doesn't work? What advice would you give to someone who's trying to find that confidence, that courageousness within themselves to take the chance and to follow their passion or to follow their values.
I love the quote by Oprah Winfrey, which actually I started the book with that, which is the biggest adventure that you can take is to live the life of your dreams. Once you have identified what your dream lifestyle is, once you have that strong vision, that strong why, you are backing all those things by your strong values, then you start approaching life with a different eyes. And when you approach life with that strength, no matter what obstacles are in front of you, you'll be able to start overcoming those obstacles by building the confidence that we talked about previously. And I think that you build that confidence by overcoming little challenges. Sometimes we look at things as problems. I love to change the word problem and turn it into a challenge. Because when you look at problems as challenges, your mindset shifts. And you can start with the small challenges. Small challenges are the ones that are tangible, that even if you have a big challenge, you can break it down into small challenges. And that's how you're going to start building the confidence, the momentum, and the inertia to overcome the bigger ones. And look, that's just the way it works.
No, I completely agree with you. I mean, I think back about even having started a business many, many years ago, and just the decision to leave a secure job and to start a business. And that was daunting, but I think you and I both share a common quote that I love, which is everything you want is on the other side of fear. You said it a little differently than I did, but this is the life that we have, and this is the chance that we have to take. So do we want to live in regret? We know that often people get to the end of their lives and they've got a lot of regrets for the things that they didn't do. We can really hold ourselves back, but when we focus on the things that are really important to us, Dale Carnegie talked about what's the worst thing that happens, right? I mean, usually it's not going to happen, but we can build from that. It's that courage to take the first step.
And you said something right there that is so powerful. Look, I love to say always the same thing. When I'm speaking at these conferences, I say, everyone dies, but not everyone lives. So live full and die empty. And that's just the matter of fact. You just see people around that are just going through the motions, but they're not really living. So it's to making the decision of, I want to live my best life, and I want to start today, and I want to take action, and I want to do whatever it takes to go in that direction. But you got to work for it. It doesn't just happen overnight. And people ask me all the time, right? Like, you just made a great introduction about myself. And when people hear about that, it's like, man, this guy has it all figured out. I did not wake up one day and, I'm flying a helicopter. I'm selling multi-million-dollar homes. I'm traveling around the world in the best hotels and so on. I'm doing this and that. No, it didn't happen overnight. It's something that, as we talked in here, you start building over time. And it all comes down to the same simple formula. Overcome the little challenges that allow you to overcome the bigger ones.
Well, that's right. When you start with those and then you gain the confidence, I think part of the challenge, we look around us and we see people who are successful, and sometimes we can think that it all came easily. And then when we see the challenges that we face, we think, well, gosh, maybe I'm not as good as Alvaro. Alvaro, look at all that Alvaro has and so forth. We can compare ourselves to other people, and that can undermine our confidence. That can be just toxic.
Comparison is the thief of joy. And I think that if you are going to compare yourself to anybody, it needs to be yourself. Just look at yourself in the mirror and see where you were before and see where you want to be moving forward. And that's where you start checking the progress. There is a beautiful thing about setting goals, which is that it gives you a purpose on achieving something. And if you can track the progress towards those goals, you're going to start building that confidence that we talked about. But that's you comparison against yourself, not everyone else. Especially now with the world of social media, it's very easy to just fall back into comparing yourself with so many others that they're just showcasing their best angles of lives. Is poisoning. And I want to make sure that if anybody that follows me on social media, because I've gotten this before, some people feel empowered, some feel inspired, but some others feel intimidated, some feel depressed, some feel angry. Even though my content is very positive and exciting and so on, it's not for everybody. And those that are not able to see that something as a source of inspiration, a source of empowerment, a source of value, people that are currently having to do extra work with themselves. And I've been through those moments as a young kid I was always looking around and being like, oh my God, this guy has this guy has that, this guy, why is doing that? And that's a problem. So identifying those things and working on yourself. And I always say that CNEI, constant never-ending improvement, right? You want to make sure that you're always working on yourself, that you're always moving forward. And eventually you're going to reach a point where your mindset is just going to be so focused on your own path, so thrilled about waking up every morning to get on and keep on moving, that whatever else you're seeing in your life is just going to be either an inspiration, partnership opportunity, whatever it is, but you want to use everything in life as fuel to move forward. Whether it's pain, whether it's motivation, whatever it is, use it as fuel. You're a marathon runner. You know that when you are in that mile 20 or mile 22, anything they give you works. They give you Coke, they give you Red Bull, they give you whatever they give you. It's like, give it to me. I need everything right now. So that's how I will look at life.
And using the marathon analogy and the life analogy, we can't control. You can prepare for a marathon. You just ran an Ironman, which is incredible. And you can prepare and train and do everything. You can't control the weather. You don't know what kind of a day you're going to get. You don't know how you're going to feel that day. But we can always draw on our training and draw on our experience and do the very best we can. Going back to the social media situation, you've got 1 million followers on Instagram. So part of your personal mission is also to bring out the best in other people. So I think that maybe part of your mission to bring out the best in other people and 1 million followers on Instagram means that a lot of people are looking at you and finding inspiration from the many things that you do. I'd encourage you to keep that up. And it's a good thing for me too, also, and for all of us to say, hey, and how do we bring out the best in other people, which is certainly as a Dale Carnegie, that's what we're trying to do, is to bring out the best in other people and organizations. Speaking of which, I know that Dale Carnegie is someone who's had an influence on you, both How to Win Friends and Influence People and some of the other writings of Dale Carnegie. Would love to hear about how Dale Carnegie's mindset kind of ties into your own.
No, absolutely. And you said something right there. I think that we all have the responsibility to do something that is bigger than ourselves. So as you progress in life, you start uncovering your ultimate gift. And one of my ultimate gifts is to help people to level up in their lives. And I've seen this through my story, that more people have been empowered to do the impossible in their own personal lives. So did not happen overnight, did not happen because something just clicked. It's just the compound effect of doing things over time. And right now, yes, I have over 1 million followers and I get to lead by example. And this is the concept of Dale Carnegie, is what is really leadership. And this is all about leading by example. A lot of people are preaching out of just what they read, but I'm telling things based off what I'm doing. And this is what people connect with, the real stories, the real background, the real things. And the more that I read about books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, like all these different books, I think that you want to apply all that knowledge and apply it right away into something that is going to help you grow. I was going through a moment in my life when I was starting the business where I was not connecting. I was tapping into an industry that was so difficult to tap into because I was young, I had no knowledge, and I was just very afraid of taking that leap of faith, of starting to approach these people. They seem so out of reach. So it's like, how can I build a network of these successful individuals? I don't feel that I can connect. So I started to go into what I had access to at the time, books, videos. And I remember one of the books that changed my perspective was the one we were talking about. And I started to reach out to people differently by adding value. I started to become the most energetic person in the room. And I always say, energy is the current currency for personal and professional success. So I remember just applying some of the concepts. And over time, that compound effect became my superpower, where people wanted to be next to me. And I started to be invited to all these different gatherings, and opportunities started to arise. We talk about the influencer marketing, right? So you're finding the concept on how can you win and influence people. How can you win those friends? How can you influence those people? And it all comes down to science and practice.
It's absolutely both of those things. And it's interesting because as I look at your entire career, so much of your success has been based on being very effective at building great relationships. That starts with trust and gaining confidence and listening to people and demonstrating respect and all the things that Dale Carnegie talked about and How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's the value when we are really good at building strong relationships and then backing that up with integrity. we really can have long-term success with other people. You've written a book. Level Up is the name of your book. What would you say, if you were to say in a couple of sentences, is the essence of Level Up?
Level up is a mindset. It's a lifestyle. It's how you look into how you can always be better. And a lot of people have been derailed from their dreams. And this is about becoming the hero of your own story. Some people, they just decide to give up or something happens. This is about taking control again. Taking control, dream wild, dream big, and go take it on because you can do it.
What would you say is one area where you have taken command outside of the business that was really a challenge for you that you're proud of?
Spiritually, I think that a lot of us do a lot of things in life, but sometimes we forget that we are not being fulfilled because of the lack of spirituality. And again, this could be through religion, it could be through mindfulness, it could be through so many other things, right? But I believe that in order for you to have that ultimate peace, ultimate harmony, ultimate happiness, you need to find that inner connection with yourself. And I was not doing it because I thought, whatever, like, I don't need that. Like, I was so busy doing other things that I forgot about that. And then all of a sudden, I realized that all the goals, everything that I ever wanted to do in different areas of my life, not just in my career, but all the crazy challenges, the experiences, the people that I wanted to meet, things that I wanted to accomplish with my business, all those things were happening. And then all of a sudden I feel this anxiety. I'm like, but why I'm not fulfilled? It's a different type of feeling versus the one that I was feeling when I was 23. I'm doing so great in all the areas of my life. So what's going on? And I think that I was living life too fast. I was always looking to what's next. So taking command, I want to be present. I want to feel calm. I want to be in control on my ultimate happiness. And that all happened by taking time in the morning, started to meditate, started to apply other mindfulness practices. And even this year, I went on to do this 10-day silent retreat called Vipassana, where I was just for 10 days unable to talk, write, read, exercise, barely eating, just once a day. And look, you meditate for over 12 hours every single day. And it's all about observing. And once you start developing these skill sets and you apply them on your day-to-day afterwards, it's very powerful. And that was something that I was proud of because everybody that was looking at my life, even my parents were worried. Like, Alvaro, you're living too fast. Like, you're not even 30 years old and you're doing so many things. Like, you might burn out. And I was not burning out, but I was not finding ultimate happiness and peace. And this gave me that.
What was the name of the retreat again?
Well, it's 10-day silent retreat. It's called Vipassana.
Vipassana. Okay. It's interesting because many times we get to a point in our lives where we do find a level of emptiness and, being able to kind of be aligned to those things that are more important than we perceive ourselves to be. That's a milestone often for us to begin to find that kind of peace. This is a podcast about leadership. How would you define leadership if you were to put it in a sentence or two?
Well, leadership is the action of leading a group or organization somewhere. I think that leadership these days has been misinterpreted or it's been taken into wrong hands by people just preaching and saying things that people should do, but definitely not applying what I believe are the best practices of leadership, which is leading by example. If you want to lead somewhere, a group of people, make sure that you're leading by example. Do it first. I cannot be talking or leading anybody to level up in their lives if I'm not doing that on my own. So I think that leadership comes down to the very fundamental of leading by example.
Right. And that's ultimately the credibility we have. We have to follow what we say, right? It's not a do as I say, not as I do. That's what a lot of times we see people will do that. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the adventures that you have undertaken. I would think that jumping out of a plane is by itself an adventure. That's not enough for you. You will stand outside of the plane, hang onto the plane. You will stand on top of the wing of a plane and do all kinds of things. What inspires you to do this?
Well, I think that it makes you feel alive. And it all comes down to that. It's just putting your brain on fire while staying present. Because when you're doing things that you were so afraid of doing, you start focusing just on that moment. You are not thinking at that time what you have to do later on. Oh, I didn't answer to this email. Oh, I have to do this phone call. Oh, I have to, take this on. Like, no, only thing you're thinking on is survive. And that's where the mindset kicks in and you just become present while being on fire. So every time that I do this adrenaline adventures or challenges are things that elevate myself to a different state of mind, that once I land, first of all, I'm appreciative of life. And I also start looking at life as limitless. You start looking at whatever else you want to do in life, it's possible. So my brain starts operating differently. And I just developed that passion towards doing this type of activities. And yeah, I skydive everywhere I can, everywhere in the world, through different type of planes, hot air balloons, helicopters, you name it. But everything in moderation, to a degree of not pushing myself that much that I can risk my life. So it's always finding that balance.
Well, it seems like a tricky balance. You've come back from an Ironman World Championship. You've done a ultra marathon through the Sahara Desert. What scares you? What's on your list that you're like, I want to do this, but I'm scared about doing this?
Well, climbing Everest is definitely a challenge that I have on my list. I've been climbing some other tall mountains just as preparation for that. Definitely that takes a lot of commitment from different angles, right? Time-wise, financially, and risky-wise. That will be a challenge. And I think that it comes down to the same thing. When I first did the first Ironman, I did it as a huge challenge for myself. And I remember crossing the finish line and I was destroyed. And I looked into the guys that were finishing at the top and how is it possible that they finished so fast? And then I started to look into what it takes to qualify for the World Championship. And once I looked into it, I'm like, there's no way. Such a huge commitment. You need to do X amount of Ironman and there's a certain amount of time. You need to finish at the top of your category. There is so many things that you need to do. And I'm like, man, this is going to be very complicated. And I remember my brother that also did that Ironman with me said, look, I'm out. Checklist is done. That's it. And I said, look, it takes so much to reach this point. I don't want to just go back to my regular workouts that I used to do. I want to continue leveling up in what I'm doing. And this is just my philosophy in life, is that, okay, I want to see that compound effect kicked in. So I worked on my fitness, on my health. I started to develop smarter ways of doing things. And I did another Ironman, and then I did another one. And then all of a sudden I qualified. I did one in like 10 hours and something, and I qualified for this World Championship. And even though it was not my best race, just to be there with the best in the sport, it was a reward on its own. And now I'm just looking into what's next, but not so much as, oh, I signed up for this race or I signed up for this challenge. It's more about what's next in my preparation towards life. What can I do to adjust what I'm doing to continue elevating? How can I train smarter? How can I do things better? How can I be more efficient? And the funny thing is that I'm stronger than ever without having to work as hard. It's just knowing yourself. And it's just when you invest, you are not investing more than what you invested at the beginning. If you keep investing the same amount for all the years, that compound effect will kick in. And all of a sudden, you're going to start seeing huge returns. And this is the same thing. I'm not training more. I'm training similar, just smarter, but eventually it's going to kick in. And this is what I'm experiencing, not just in sports, but in everything in life.
Well, one of the things you touched on, which is absolutely critical to me, at least I've seen this, is consistency. We can start and stop and go up and down, but just that consistent forward movement, even a small amount, a little bit every day. I talked to someone the other day who said he reads 10 pages of a book every day. And sometimes, we'll say, okay, I want to read a book a week, and then we fail, but he's consistently reading 10 pages a week and he's reading books after books. So that consistent small thing and whatever it is that's important to us really can enable us to grow and, as you said, level up.
I agree 100%. And it's about finding the best ways to acquire that for yourself. It's not always based on what somebody says. It's about what fits best with what you do. I consume knowledge through audio way better than through reading. And if I know that while I'm going for a run, my brain is on fire, is operating amazingly, If I put an audiobook, I'm consuming that. And then what I do is I take 30 seconds to a minute after that session to write down the highlights of that thing. Or I even have Siri, right, that I say, hey, write out this, and that, so I don't forget certain notes while I'm running. And it's beautiful because if I'm preparing myself for, as you mentioned, like let's say the Marathon des Sables, which is 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara Desert, trust me that the preparation requires a lot of run. So while I'm preparing for that, I don't just want to be running for hours every day and that's it. I want to start consuming knowledge so that it multiplies the way that I'm doing things. And what it turned out to be a session of 2 or 3 hours running, now it turned out to be a session of 2 and 3 hour running, plus also an audiobook that I just consumed, which is amazing, right? So this is something that it's very powerful and you need to find your best way of doing it.
That's great advice. And especially when we can layer multiple things in. So you might say, I have a goal to learn and I have a goal to exercise, or I have a goal to be in relationship with someone. And, if we can combine things, running with somebody or running and listening to an audiobook, there's different ways we can layer things in to be more productive. One of the things I've added to this podcast over the last several episodes is integration with ChatGPT. I went to ChatGPT and I said, I'm going to be interviewing Alvaro and put some information in about you in it. And I said, if you could ask Alvaro, 5 things, what would you ask? And it gave me a list of things. And I said, all right, if you could only ask one thing, what would you ask? So let me tell you what ChatGPT would like to know. What is the single most important piece of advice or principle that you believe has been instrumental in your success as a leader and entrepreneur? And how would you recommend applying it to inspire and lead others effectively?
By the way, I love the way that you approached it by asking ChatGPT. Like, it's a great way to get interesting questions. I will say that it comes down to a very random answer, but that was very effective and strong for me. It was the word impossible. I got this every time I tried to do something that I wanted to do. And the answer was always impossible, which I replied to, just watch me. I think that right now we have a really strong way to showcase the world that whatever people described as impossible is actually possible. And I want to be one of those individuals that shows people that whatever is categorized of impossible, it can be done. And you don't need to be part of those buckets where you have to be really good at that in order to make it happen. You can be extraordinary in every single area of your life. You want to be an Olympian and at the same time be a great business owner and have an amazing family and be the most spiritual person in the world and make millions. You can do all of that. I'm not even 30 years old, but I'm in a direction where I believe that I can do anything I want. And I want to showcase the world that it is possible, that you can level up in each area of your life. You don't have to just focus on your career and just be good in your business and don't take care of your health, don't take care of your family, don't take care of this. You can do everything you want. You can be extraordinary everywhere.
It starts with that mindset. It starts with the mindset of saying, what do I want and what is my value and what am I committed to doing? Because clearly you have achieved an incredible amount, as you said, in under 30. So I'm looking forward to seeing what the future years hold for you and the great example you can set. Any final advice for our listeners?
Well, I think that what you guys are doing is fantastic. So definitely encouraging everybody to continue listening to your podcast because you have some amazing guests and very valuable information. I think that taking command on your life and on everything that you want to do is one of the first steps that gear towards success. And I just want to congratulate you for what you're doing and to thank you for having me here. And yes, encouraging others as well to check out the book, Level Up. I also have a free masterclass that people can attend. It's a couple hours of valuable information. It's a bit more in detail about how to level up in each area of your life. I'm sure you'll put the link in there. It's also on my bio on Instagram. You can find me, Alvaro Nunez, and I'm here for anything that you need.
So if people want to check out the book or the masterclasses, what is the website for that?
You can go directly to my bio and you will find everything. I have the links in there, alvaronunez.com/my book or alvaronunez.com/masterclass. And you'll have all the information in there.
All right, Alvaro, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate you and best of luck.
Thank you. Join us and order a copy of Take Command in hardcover, ebook, or audiobook format at your favorite bookseller or at takecommandbook.io. Also, you can visit takecommand.com for more information about the book and additional resources. I hope you enjoyed this edition of Take Command, a Dale Carnegie podcast. Check out our resources page at www.dalecarnegie.com for more research, insight, and tools that will support your success in taking command of your leadership potential. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating it and subscribing to us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. As always, thank you for listening, and we look forward to you joining us for the next episode of Take Command, a Dale Carnegie podcast.